My name is Brian Price, and welcome HLS in the Community Transactional Lawyering. And I'm going to introduce our panelists to you. We have a full panel, a lot of people with a lot of great things to tell you about. Marea Parker, who's a clinical instructor in TLC, Transactional Law Clinics. Joe Hedal, also an instructor in the clinics. Carlos Teuscher, who directs the Community Enterprise Project. Tonya Johnson, who is a longtime client of the clinics and also an owner of a highly successful baked goods company and caterer and food industry company. She'll tell you more about that. Linda Cole is also an instructor who heads up the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project and works in the Recording Artist Project. Faith Mitton, who is a practicing attorney now, but an alum of the clinic. Steve Salcedo, also an alum of the clinic. And Brett Heeger at the end there, an alum of the clinic as well. So what we want to do in the next hour and a half is give you an overview of what transactional lawyering from Harvard Law School has looked like over the years and what we're currently doing now. So there's a long history for the law school in doing this. In the last 20 years, we've been doing transactional lawyering. And the clinics, the transactional law clinics, are a number of different things. The business and nonprofit clinic, the real estate clinic, the entertainment law clinic, and also the Community Enterprise Project, and student practice organizations which are under the umbrella of the transactional law clinics, the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project and the Recording Artist Project. So I'd like to give you a brief history of where this all began. 1994, it began as a project of the Legal Service Center in Jamaica Plain. And for those of you who don't know, the Legal Service Center is a community law office started in around the mid-1970s by Professor Gary Bello and also Gene Charn. And they were early pioneers in clinical legal education. They actually brought clinical legal education to Harvard Law School. And at the time, the beginning of this project was a joint undertaking of the Legal Services Center and the law firm of Hale and Dorr. And in the beginning, the project was called the Corporate Law Project, and it was funded initially by the Amelia Peabody Foundation in 1994 and 1995 with an initial grant of $140,000. This was really innovative at the time, bringing together the practicing bar and law schools to provide corporate legal services. So initially, Hale and Dorr provided case supervision for students, provided access to the corporate document database, and also provided mentoring to clinical instructors. The birth of this project, the Corporate Law Project, was really an outgrowth of the spirit that existed at the Legal Service Center at the time among Gary and Gene, and they were innovative. This was an experiment to see whether or not this was a viable path to pursue in education and also in delivery of legal services for students. So LSC was conceived with a three-part mission: educate students, deliver legal services, and serve as a laboratory for innovation in the delivery of services. The Corporate Law Project was the first transactional law clinic in Boston and one of the first in the country. Up until that point in time, most clinics were practicing litigation in traditional poverty law areas: family law, domestic law, housing, landlord and tenant, and public benefits. So to initiate the Corporate Law Project in '94, a lot of outreach was done into the community. And people from community development corporations were consulted. Other stakeholders like merchant associations, nonprofit organizations, government officials, community lenders, all were sought for input into shaping what the program ultimately would be. Delivery of legal services actually commenced in 1995, and the title of the project at that time then was renamed the Corporate Legal Services Pilot Project. And early work included working with nonprofit organizations in corporate matters, also real estate acquisitions and real estate development, residential and commercial. There was a companion course taught by our Hale & Dorr partner, and that was called the Corporate Law and Community Renewal. And eventually the name of the project became the Community Enterprise Project. And initially, the service mission was accessing capital and developing equity ownership in the community among low and moderate income individuals, entrepreneurs, and business owners, and contributing to improving the economic infrastructure that existed in the neighborhoods that we served. I joined CEP in 1997. In the early years of CEP, our work mostly was in the real estate area. We helped to create and preserve equity among homeowners. And our partners in the early years were community development corporations, first-time homeowner associations, and we helped with permitting, refinancing, sales, acquisitions, leasing, and zoning. In 1998, just to give you an example of the magnitude of the work we were doing, we assisted 61 first-time homeowners to acquire property with an asset value of over $7 million. CEP had a lot of community partners throughout the years. In one instance, we worked with a CEC and helped develop over 450 units of affordable housing. And also, in the spirit of the innovation that ensued out of LSC, the predatory lending clinic also was spawned out of the work we were doing in the Community Enterprise Project, and now it exists as a standalone clinic over at LSC, along with the Consumer Law Clinic. In 1998, CEP also spawned the Recording Artist Project, and the Recording Artist Project was an initiative conceived by a 2L student and a 3L student because they saw in the music industry the victimization that occurred for music artists who were underrepresented and didn't know their legal rights. So CEP was a natural fit to work with musicians because they were and are entrepreneurs. So we help the Recording Artist Project clients with things like record deals, publishing contracts, and other ways of protecting their intellectual property. And we also had the privilege of working with even a Grammy Award-winning artist who at the time was a fledgling startup entrepreneur herself, just entering the music business. So eventually, the real estate market in Boston changed. It became very expensive for clients in our particular catchment area to acquire real estate. And our community partners shifted their focus away from real estate into business development, and we followed with them. So as time went on, the bulk of our work became working with businesses doing transactional work and nonprofit organizations. And our aim remained the same, to help them to generate revenue and employment for neighborhood residents, to assist with supporting and creating businesses and handling other business transactions. Over the years, we've also been involved in conducting numerous workshops in the community, and they've ranged across the spectrum, and Carlos will mention some of those workshops when he speaks in a little while. So now, business law and nonprofit law constitutes most of the work that we do in the transactional law clinics. And this matches the educational interests of our students, most of whom will wind up doing transactional work in a big firm. And so Joe and Maria are going to talk in a little while about some of the details about how we actually educate students in the transactional law clinics. In 2009, the Community Enterprise Project moved to campus and became the Transactional Law Clinics. The thinking for the name change was we were no longer immersed in the community at a community law office, and so we wanted to reflect more accurately who he had become. And also it would be easier for students to identify the kind of work they would be doing in the clinic to match their interest. When we moved, our client demographic changed as well. We were getting more clients from the Harvard community, more clients from across the state. And also by that time, other law schools had begun to develop their own clinics, and the practicing bar also had stepped in and providing legal services for small business people in those neighborhoods. So there were needs being met elsewhere. In 2010, again, TLC spawned another endeavor, which was an outgrowth of an initiative started by a 2L and a 3L student. And this initiative was the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project. And HLEP services clients from the Harvard community and from MIT. And Linda will tell us more about that when she speaks. 2010, CEP arose from the dead. It was reincarnated, revived. We started the clinic anew back in Jamaica Plain. Brett was a part of that starting of the clinic, and also Steve was a student in the clinic for a number of semesters, and they'll tell you about some of their experiences. And Carlos will tell us more, who heads up the CEP clinic now. So we're HLS in the community, transactional lawyering. TLC started as CEP. Our notion of community was different then than it is now. At the time, we started with a geographic idea of what community is. Now that idea of community has expanded. We do a lot of different things. Our clients are part of a global economy, and so the needs of low bono and pro bono clients are not just limited to areas that are bounded by geography. So we use transactional practice as the law school to help people in a number of different endeavors, variety of entrepreneur communities, neighborhood communities, industry communities, interest group communities, areas of practice. We do this, we've had a lot of help over the years with a number of very talented attorneys and clinical instructors, pro bono attorneys from various firms, particularly Hale & Dorr and Goodwin Procter. Had a lot of community partners over the years, community organizations, government agencies, and other law schools. We've had the good fortune of working with thousands of clients, one of whom is Tonya. She'll talk in a little while. We've worked with thousands of students who've been instrumental in serving clients and doing pro bono work for clients, and handled thousands of transactions. So it's been a great experience. And now I'm going to ask Joe to tell everyone more details about what the transactional law clinics are doing today. And Marea.
Great, thank you, Brian. So hello everyone, I'm Joe Hedal, and sitting to my left is Marea Parker. We both teach in the transactional law clinics. And we're going to spend 5-10 minutes just telling you something about the work that we do, our clients, and the educational experience that our students have here in the clinic. So Brian just gave a very comprehensive review of the chronology of the transactional law clinics, covering some of the history and the very rich and robust history that this clinic has had. And as you can see, the clinics have evolved over a number of years. So just to reset for you where we are today, under the umbrella of the transactional law clinics, there are 4 clinics that are taken by students today for academic credit, these 4 clinics. I work primarily in the business and nonprofit clinic. Marea does as well, though she has expertise in real estate. And having said that, both of us, as well as all of the attorneys on the panel and in the clinics, are generalists, and we work across all of these areas. So in terms of where we are today, obviously, we're on campus. Our principal office is here in the law school in the clinical wing in Cambridge. We also have an office in Jamaica Plain where the Community Enterprise Project primarily works out of. Carlos is going to be speaking more about that, as well as some of the former students who are now lawyers speaking about their experience there. We work and hold office hours in the iLab, the Harvard Innovation Lab, which some of you may be aware of. It's an accelerator space, a startup over near the business school, in which collaborations of student startups from a variety of Harvard schools, everything from the business school to the Harvard Kennedy School, the School of Public Health, all collaborate in startups that typically work on technology-based or social mission-based businesses. And in addition, we have offices and our hold office hours with some of our community partners. For example, the Fairmount Innovation Lab, which is in a neighborhood of Boston in Dorchester, is an accelerator as well that we have a partnership with. So some of you here today are probably quite familiar with the clinical teaching model. Some of you may be less familiar, so we just wanted to give you a very high-level view and picture of how we view clinical teaching and what it represents. So clinical teaching, when I think of it, I think of the proverbial three-legged stool, and the three legs in clinical teaching are practice, service, and education. And I'd say that those three things come together in a really wonderful way in clinical teaching that provide an opportunity for us to deliver services to deserving clients, as well as provide a very robust and rich educational experience for our students. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Maria, who's going to provide a little bit more detail on the educational experience of our students.
Thank you, Joe. Good afternoon. I'm Marea Parker. I'd like to talk to you a little bit about how the clinics provide Harvard Law students with an individualized educational experience. Each student who comes into the clinic is a unique student advocate when one considers that each student comes with their own experience level. They are possibly straight out of college. When they enter law school, they may have had previous work experience. They may come with PhDs, they may be LLM students. When they enter the clinic, they may be second or third year law students. So all of those factors really change the type of student advocate this student may be. In addition, they all have different objectives when they come into clinic, some of the goals that they hope to achieve from the work that they do there. Secondly, we have a lot of different clients that they can work with. We have small businesses, startups, and entrepreneurs. We have not-for-profits. We have real estate clients, which can range from people purchasing or selling property, trying to develop homes and develop properties and things like that. We have entertainment clients. So the way the students actually are assigned cases varies. We have an intake process where people in the community, whether it's the local community or the Harvard community, can call into our offices and say that they need legal help, or they can fill out an internet application. We also visit the iLab, which is the innovation lab that Joe mentioned, which is an accelerator near the business school, where we meet with students from the business school, education school, Kennedy School, medical school, and the college. We also can meet with people from schools like MIT if they've been partnered with a Harvard student. Then we have collaborations with other clinics. We've worked with the HLab, Cyber Law, the Mediation Program, the Food Law Clinic, and I think the Veterans Clinic and Disability Clinic as well. We have relationships with legal professionals and firms such as Hale & Dorr and Goodman Proctor, as Brian mentioned. And we also get referrals from the City of Boston, the planning, neighborhood development areas, and also the Lawyers Clearinghouse. Another aspect of their unique education is really brought about by the class structure of the workshop that Brian Price teaches. In the class, at the middle of the semester, the students begin something called rounds, where they describe the cases that they've been working on. They share their case information. They discuss their legal approaches to cases. They talk about ethical issues that have arisen during the course of the representation. And then they begin collaborating with their peers. They make responses to the memos that are produced. They start discussing the cases in class with each other, and then after class in the clinic. The next area in which there's an individualized approach is really in the mentoring that we offer to the students. We work very closely with them to help them develop strategies to engage their clients and to engender client trust. That's one of the unique aspects of clinical teaching and working in transactional law, where they really get to work with real clients, and that may be unfamiliar to them. And then one of the, key pieces of the way we monitor things here is that we have a self-assessment portion of our clinic, which also includes a professor's assessment. And the students identify categories of learning objectives. We work with them on law practice skills and knowledge, communication and interpersonal skills, ethical and professional values and sensitivities, and learning skills. And then by reviewing these categories and looking at a rubric of where you can measure your achievement, the student is actually able to look at what they've been working on and assess for themselves where they think they are. And then we follow with our assessment, and that's done again at the end of the year. So in that way, the student receives a unique clinical experience. They are taught to where they are, and we work with them on their goals to move to where they would like to be. So I'd like to turn it back over to Joe to talk about some more clients that we've served.
Okay, thanks, Maria. So as you're getting a sense, our clients are very broad. Pretty much any small business that you can think of is probably a business we've worked with. We love businesses like Tonya that are baking businesses for obvious reasons, but at the same time, practically any business that you can think of, we've worked with everything from yoga studios, personal trainers, dog walking services. Like I said, anything you can think of, we work with. On the nonprofit side, similarly broad, everything from a mission of a nonprofit that's supporting teenagers that are at risk in neighborhoods of Boston to much broader geographical mission nonprofits that are supporting improvement of healthcare in India, for example. So to talk about a few specific representative clients, if you go half a mile from here towards Somerville, Aeronaut Brewing is a craft brewery that was established in 2014. They came to us in 2013. It's a group of MIT students. It's actually the first craft brewery in Somerville in over 100 years. And they have a mission, in addition to serving great beer, of being a community space and a voice for the community. And they also support arts and culture in the community. And if we could, the work that was done, they came to us, they needed an operating agreement, so an agreement amongst the founders of the business. They also were trying to raise money to start the business, and so that our students helped them with a private placement. Students did everything in the private placement, ranging from preparation of a private placement memo, research into federal and state securities laws, filing with the federal government of a Regulation D filing for the exemption under the securities laws, blue sky work, so basically the state securities laws. They did work in the filings in that as well. So essentially all of the aspects of a private placement were handled by students, and they successfully raised the money to start the business. And if we could just click quickly to their website, and I'll show you a video of their launch.
Attempt at our Charonaut launch.
That's our client right there.
8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
And that's our other client. Okay, so leave it to a group of MIT students to launch a chair with hot air balloons and have it attached to a kite where they can reel it back in. So next representative client would be a pizzeria. If you go half mile the other direction towards Boston and Alston, Brighton, there's a pizzeria called La Befana, and our students helped them with an acquisition. They came to us about 2 years ago. We represented the buyer. The buyer was a worker in the business. He was a minority immigrant who was working in the business, had an opportunity to buy the business. The owner of the business was getting out of the business, and our students helped with all aspects of the acquisition, everything from the acquisition agreement to setting up the acquisition vehicle. There was a lease issue with the tenant that had to be dealt with. There was permitting issues. So all of these issues were handled by our students, due diligence for the acquisition. And in addition to that, the client of ours was had very limited English skills, so our students also had to deal with or handle translation issues in the deal. So that would be another client. And then to give you an example of a nonprofit, this is a nonprofit that we worked with in spring of 2017. And when we think of HLS in the community, as Brian mentioned, it's gotten much broader than our original kind of roots in JP. This is a nonprofit that started here in Boston, but had a mission to establish a school in Africa. And our students helped with formation of the nonprofit, as well as getting them through tax-exempt application and approval, which is more complicated for an organization that is going to be having its operations outside of the U.S. So that was an additional complication. The Ivory Coast, where the school is being started, is a country that suffered through over 10 years of civil war. 46% of the population there is below poverty line, so this is a really needed service in that country. And to just give you a little picture of what this nonprofit has done in basically less than a year, they're currently raising money for the next gala. But we'll show you just a little, this is from their website.
Turn toward the problems you see. You have to engage and turn towards the problems that you see. That is what I want to urge you to do today, to turn towards the problems that you see and engage with them. Walk right up to them, look them in the eye, and then look yourself in the eye and decide what you're going to do about them.
Okay, so with that, I'm going to turn it over to Carlos, who's going to get us back to communities that are a little closer to Boston, talking about the Community Enterprise Project.
Thanks, Joe. So my name is Carlos Teuscher. I currently direct the Community Enterprise Project. We'll call it CEP now, just for my sake. In CEP, students focus their work on transactional legal needs for low-income communities in the greater Boston area. So primarily focusing around the Legal Services Center that's located in JP. So JP, Dorchester, Mattapan, Roxbury, that entire swath. So at CEP, we generally follow the community lawyering model, right? So what does that mean? That means that the majority of our work is being driven by CDCs, community organizations, grassroots groups, and Main Street organizations from the neighborhoods that we serve. In fact, many of the matters that we take on, like Maria mentioned, are cases that are referrals from these organizations. And the entire, all of the students in TLC will take on these cases. So three main areas that students in CP engage in are direct legal services, project advocacy, and legal workshops. So in terms of direct legal advocacy, this nice map of Boston, and the areas that we serve are generally on the southern half. So among other things, we do the same things that TLC does, right? So entity formation is contract drafting, general real estate matters. But similar to some of the cases that Joe mentioned, we do a lot of complex cases. For example, this past semester, we were representing a new impact investment fund. We're helping them draft a form of term sheet, form of loan agreement, and these are going to be used to support the communities that in their neighborhood, right? So on favorable terms. So it's not going to be predatory, low interest rate, give them PIK options to let them repay over time. As a junior associate at any firm could attest, that's a very challenging matter, right? A loan agreement in itself, financing transactions, and having to know the UCC, everything is very super complex. And so the student this semester had to learn all of that and sort of go through the process of advising the client who also didn't have that expertise. So that was a really good way to develop the client and also develop the student's expertise. One of my goals for students in CP is to help them understand that transactional law can be a transformative tool to battle poverty issues. Transactional law, as opposed to litigation, is very offensive, right? You can take the offense to many things. It's not like we don't worry about wage violations. Instead we try to structure entities so that they don't have to, they could avoid these employment issues. We don't worry about displacement, right? We're trying to focus on how can we be sure to make sure that the homes in their neighborhoods remain affordable. So that's where we get into the next two areas of CP's work. First is our advocacy project. As many of you know, low bono and pro bono legal services are in high demand. There are organizations out there that refer a lot of cases to law firms. But in even more cases, a lot of clients don't know that they should contact a lawyer, right, before they're signing a contract. My kids don't want to talk to me, they don't want to talk to a lawyer. Most people don't want to talk to lawyers until something bad really happens. And so what we're trying to do with these toolkits, these advocacy projects, is to create documents, these wonderful legal toolkits for, wrong slide. wonderful legal toolkits that give access to legal information to communities, right, without having to have them talk to a lawyer. So just going from left to right, so this immigrant entrepreneur toolkit, which Steve helped on back when he was a student, it talks about what are the key issues to consider when you want to start a business as an immigrant, right, documented or undocumented, regardless. And this toolkit has had kind of really amazing reach, right? You know, just last month, for example, this was published in spring 2015, but just last month, a legal clinic from Chicago contacted me asking, you know, sort of how we developed the information. And I think when Steve was working on it, University of Texas Law School, they were thinking about doing a similar type of project. The commercial lease toolkit, this is something we did last semester. So this was targeted for small business tenants, right? Commercial tenants have no protections outside of what's in their lease. So if for example, the landlord fails to repair the boiler in the basement and the basement floods, the tenant still has an obligation to pay their lease, right? Pay their rent. So what this toolkit was meant to do was really, you know, explain lease provisions to tenants and provide them with examples of, you know, other provisions that they could insert that would make the lease more favorable to them. Other public benefit entrepreneurship toolkit. This, how can I make sure to keep my Social Security or other benefits while I'm starting my business, right? You know, as many of you know, starting a business you're going to be in the red for the first 10 years. But if you're just starting your business, you could lose all of your public benefits. So, for example, in SSDI, if someone makes more than $1,200 a month, then you could lose all of your SSDI benefits. The food truck legal toolkit, I think this was Brett and Steve, both of you. This is how can I start a food truck in the city of Boston, right? I was just talking to the city recently, and they're like, we use this toolkit for all of our food trucks, right? This is something that we use. We don't even look at our own regulations, we use our toolkit. And then the last one I put up here is the worker co-op toolkit. So how can people start a worker co-op in Massachusetts and the issues to consider? And this has been kind of key for CEP because this toolkit, you know, happened as the solidarity economy movement was sort of coming up and boiling itself over. And now, you know, a lot of people in Massachusetts will come to us because of this toolkit, thinking that we are sort of the premier legal sort of services for starting these worker cooperatives. So all these project ideas were developed by students in CEP, right? It's not the clinical instructor that says, oh, let's do this project next semester. These are all project ideas that the students have developed over the course of the semester. And they're able to do that because they are in the community. Spending half of our time at the Legal Services Center in JP, they are out there speaking with community organizations, grassroots groups, and trying to figure out what are the issues to consider. And they come up in different ways, right? Some of these toolkits, the students might have a personal interest in the subject matter. You know, if it's an environmental or criminal justice, or even solidarity economy concept, they suggest a project idea. Students also come face to face with these issues over the course of the semester through their direct legal services, right? So like the public benefits project and commercial lease project, this was something that we had seen so many clients come to us and we would be like, we can't help you because it's at the stage where it's too late, it's too close to litigation or you already lost your benefits. So the idea with these toolkits is let's stop the problem before it actually happens. And then the third is, like I mentioned, the relationship that we have with community groups. A project this semester that we did this semester is one example. We're working with the Greater Boston Community Land Trust Network. So we're trying to figure out ways in which communities can gain control of the land in their neighborhood to ensure that there's permanent affordability both for tenants and for the small businesses that serve them. So the second way CEP tries to address the concept of transformative change is legal workshops. So in these past 2 semesters alone, we've conducted about 6 workshops around Massachusetts, and this is just the students doing it. Workshops were done in Dorchester, Jamaica Plain, Somerville. We even went out to Worcester to do them. And the topics, you know, ranged. Some was, you know, situated towards the project, so we did workshops on commercial leases. We did workshops on public benefits, And we also did just general entity formation, what type of entity is right for your business. And the legal workshops are a great way to increase the knowledge base of the communities. But part of our mission from a clinical perspective is to give students the opportunity to practice and to learn a subject area, right? And having to do a workshop is something that you have to know the subject matter deeply in order to actually present it. And coupled with the workshops is we usually do office hours. So they would do one-on-one representation, limited representation where the client comes in, asks a legal question, and the students are on the spot to answer that question. So that really develops, public speaking skills and being able to sort of really on the cuff analyze any legal issues. So now I'll pass it back to Brian to introduce Tonya.
So our next speaker is Tonya Johnson. Tonya's been a long-time client of the clinic. We're really happy and proud of all the work that she's put in and the development that she's done. Tonya started off as a one-person company, and now her company employs teams of chefs, cooks, bakers, and utility personnel. She handles federal contracts. She works for private companies. And in the food services industry, she operates in New England, but also in Canada too. And so I'd just like to have Tonya, the name of her company is Vision Sewn, the Ancient Bakers. And we love her cookies. And now she does so many other things too. So turn it over to Tonya.
All right. Well, good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for having me, Brian, and your colleagues and all the former law students and present lawyers. It's been a really long journey to this day. When I met Brian, I was actually, my son, who is in the audience, raise your hand. Then he and I were homeless and on welfare. But I had this big dream that I could actually be a business owner and that entrepreneurship could actually transform our lives and change it for the better. So coming out of the shelter, I met a woman who said, you need to meet Brian Price. And they called her the angel. But then when I got to Brian, I said, wow, I think he is really the angel. So he listened to all my business wishes, aspirations, and understood that I was coming not only from homelessness and welfare, but also my business was in another state. We were incorporated in Illinois, and so I was like, I don't even know how to get the business here. So he listened to that, and we talked about the fact that I'd already worked with Loyola's Transactional Law Clinic, and so happened both directors knew each other. Joe Stone, Brian, they knew each other, and so it made the dissolution of the one company much easier to manage, and then to begin here as a new company in Massachusetts. So that was the big turning point for our lives. We actually got to start here in Massachusetts because of that, the Transactional Law Clinic's help. Beyond that, my humble goal was just to sell bakery products. I thought, what a great place to start, Massachusetts, people love health and wellness bakery, anything healthy here because it's a health environment. And I felt like this would be a great shot. Let's give it a try. Let's try to sell these products. And so we started off really small, going to farmers markets, doing food shows, bringing samples to Brian. That was our payment, we would pay him in cookies. And then ultimately, we got into more serious legal work. I needed to know how to protect my formulas because there's a lot of intellectual property tied up in the way we bake. It's so different. We just use plants. We use ancient grains, medicinal plants, teas, flowers, unconventional products. And so the new formulations needed a way to be protected. And so Brian would talk me through or refer me to other attorneys who could talk about intellectual property protection and how to guard the trade secrets. So we did that. We were referred to a estate planning clinic so we could do some estate planning and put a will together because we didn't have any of that. We went through a lot of food regulations and leases to lease space to actually bake legally in Massachusetts. I think my best memory was working with Michelle Wu, who is now the Boston president of City Council. She actually worked with me and Brian as a student advocate, and she helped to put together some term sheets. We were trying to figure out how to raise capital, and within my family, we didn't actually do it, but we actually went through the exercise to learn how to do it, which was really important. The most important work to date that we actually have gone through together is the Small Business Administration has an 8A business development program, and it's a 9-year business development program sponsored by the federal government. And it's a voluminous application. I mean, it's huge. And the first time I turned it in, I got turned down. The second time, it got rejected again, and I was like, oh my gosh, what are we gonna do? So I brought the application to Brian and one of the student advocates, and we actually walked step by step through the application process. And 11 months later, after a lot of rigor and grueling investigation, my company was accepted into the program in September of 2015. So today, we are a federal food service contractor. And we have our first contract with Otis Air National Guard Base down in the military, so we do food service there. We also are doing scale-up work in Canada. And so I'm working with the City of Toronto and a group called Food Starter that's helping to actually grow the products into commercially produced products. And they referred me to a group in Canada, well, a legal group, Norton Rose Fulbright Innovation Legal Clinic. So Harvard has helped to open a door abroad as well. So, Harvard Transactional Law Clinic has helped to order my life and help me to reach these dreams. And today the company is doing well. We have a lot of interest from farmers markets, from college and university food service, because these products are in demand. So we're really thankful to the clinic.
All right. Next, we're going to hear from Linda Cole, and Linda's going to talk to us about the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project and the Recording Artist Project, 2 student practice organizations.
Good afternoon, everyone. As Brian mentioned earlier, the Transactional Law Clinics is also the home to 2 student practice organizations, the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project, or HLEP, and the Recording Artists Project, which we affectionately refer to as RAP. These student practice organizations really grew up organically in the last decade of TLC's life. They grew up out of student interest, and really what makes the student practice organizations special is the fact that they allow for broader student participation. 1Ls are able to participate in these organizations in addition to 2 and 3Ls who are in the clinics, and they really are able to be exposed to the same skill sets, which in entrepreneurship and music, they will be doing contract drafting. They do doctrinal research. They do fact-finding, investigation, and probably the most important is many have their first opportunity to meet with clients, to interview the clients, and to learn about what the client's needs are and what their issues are. So if we start with the Harvard Law Entrepreneurship Project, we serve startups coming out of the Harvard schools and out of MIT. We oftentimes work with the iLab at the business school, the Social Innovation and Change Initiatives Studio at the Harvard Kennedy School. We have entrepreneurs from Harvard College, the medical school, the School of Public Health. It's really a broad range of entrepreneurs from within the Harvard University system. And from MIT, we oftentimes have clients from the Media Lab or the Martin Trust Center for Entrepreneurship. What the students do in HLEP is they do legal research and analysis. Some of the most important issues that we look at for entrepreneurs are business formation, employment considerations, regulatory frameworks, and also intellectual property protection. So regardless of whether the entrepreneurs are in business or music, oftentimes their questions are very similar. So just a small snapshot of this semester in HLEP, we have teams of students who work under the supervision of outside attorney advisors who generously donate their time from local area law firms. And we work with the client throughout the course of the semester. One of our most recent clients is the Participatory Culture Foundation, whom we met at the Berkman Klein Center here at Harvard. And they are developing technologies really to make our society more inclusive. And their flagship product, which they call Amara, some of you may have used and not realized it. They help to drive things such as TED Talks. If you ever listen to TED Talks on business, science, or even social issues, their technology provides subtitles so that these videos can be translated into over 100 languages and shared around the globe. Also, within HLEP, we offer students, if they have interest, to do individual on-site projects. This semester, I've been working with a student for a client called Impactivo, whom we met through the Harvard Kennedy School. And Impactivo is currently working in San Juan, Puerto Rico, using technology to help make healthcare more accessible to the island's inhabitants, which has been especially important in the devastation that was left by Hurricane Maria. Also part of HLEP is a group called Incubate, and this is a group of Harvard Law students themselves who are burgeoning entrepreneurs who are interested in starting businesses, and they've formed a very tight, close-knit community. And we're very proud of Evasort, who we see the Evasort team here on the slide behind me. They recently received seed financing to power their company, which is using artificial intelligence for contract management in the legal industry. So for all of our practitioners out there, keep an eye out for Evasort. They're up and coming. Each year in the spring, the HLEP students have an opportunity to take a student trip where we go either to New York or to Silicon Valley. And during the trip, the students, 1Ls, 2Ls, and 3Ls have the opportunity to meet with law firm practitioners, to meet with general counsels at startup companies, and also at venture funds. And this is really an opportunity for our students to get out, to collaborate with practitioners and explore what their future interests may be. So moving on to the Recording Artist Project, here in RAP, we are also supporting entrepreneurs, but these entrepreneurs take the shape of artists. And what we do for these artists, we do a lot of copyright and trademark work to help preserve their creations. And we do a lot of contracts. We do producer agreements, management agreements, merchandising agreements, because our artists many of them are just getting started and they're trying to build their brands. So one of the things that we do in RAP is that we engage with artists. Just last week, we had a special visit from Third Story and Grace Weber, who are some young artists who were out on tour, and they talked to our students about sort of how they developed their soulful brand of music. And we had a really nice Q&A with the musicians where students were able to learn about the creative process, because if our students are going to be serving artists, it's really important that they understand them as well. So also with RAP, we oftentimes host legal practitioners in entertainment law. We've been fortunate to host former RAP alumni, and also professionals from the Berklee College of Music who can help our students to learn what it looks like to be an entertainment law attorney and what types of issues and what work they may do. Also important in RAP is learning about the music industry. I think you'd all agree that digital technology has radically transformed what the music industry looks like. and for helping our artists navigate that industry and what new revenue streams look like, what new players in the industry look like with sort of a decline in what we think of as the typical big label and more independent work and initiative that artists are able to take to build their brand. And finally, we've been graced in rap by a friend of rap, Dr. Michael Harrington, who has come on several occasions to talk to us about copyright disputes and what they look like in the courtroom. He recently told us about the case of Blurred Lines, which some of you may remember, where the family of Marvin Gaye brought suit against Robin Thicke and Pharrell Williams for a song that they believed had taken some of the information from Marvin Gaye's music. So that case is still winding its way through the court system. If you talk to Dr. Michael Harrington, he does not believe the decision came out sort of musically the right way, but stay tuned. And so thank you for the opportunity to talk today a little bit about our student practice organizations.
Thanks, Linda. So next we're going to hear from 3 former students of the Transactional Law Clinics. And I'm going to introduce all of them at once, and then we'll ask them to speak in order, Brett, and then Faith, and then Steve. So Brett graduated in 2014. Brett Heeger. He was awarded Harvard Law School's 2014 Exemplary Clinical Student Award for, among other things, his leadership in reincarnating the Community Enterprise Project. I had mentioned to you that it was dormant for a few years, and then it came back and reinstituted in Jamaica Plain. After he graduated, Brett worked for Community Development Corporation in West Philadelphia, and he supported local food enterprises there with business advising and technical support. He's now practicing law in LA at a boutique law firm, Gartenberg, Gelfand, and Hayton. And his work there includes leading the firm's social enterprise and worker-owned cooperative practice areas. Faith Mitton is a former student of TLC, and she's now the managing attorney of Mitton Law, a virtual law practice located in New York City. Her clients include businesses, nonprofits, and social enterprises with web-based operations. And her practice focuses on e-commerce, trademark, and marketing law. And prior to opening her firm, after she graduated from HLS, she worked in New York City, the Bar Association's Neighborhood Entrepreneur Project. Steve Salcedo, a student in the Community Enterprise Project for 3 semesters, graduated in 2016, and now he manages a small business legal clinic in his hometown of Buffalo, New York. It's a program of the nonprofit Western New York Law Center, and his clinic provides free transactional legal services to low-income entrepreneurs. And his work is funded by the Skadden Foundation Fellowship Grant. So let's first start off hearing from Brett down there at the end of the table.
Sure. Yeah, okay, I'll just jump in. It's great. I don't have to really tell you about my practice because everything that the people here have spoke about, I do, but in Los Angeles. So, I've recently helped a brewery get started and raise financing. I'm currently working with a couple of cooperatives, helping them get started, deal with the fact that some of the worker owners are undocumented. I'm helping with an acquisition, although it's not a pizza shop, it's a cannabis dispensary, but that's life in LA. I was in the Transactional Law Clinic in CP for 3 semesters during my time at HLS and involved in other capacities as well. It was really a defining piece of my experience, and a lot of credit to Brian and the team. When your instructor works with entrepreneurs every day, they really are open to ideas from your students. So I came in from, through Charles Ogletree, I had met some people out in Springfield, Massachusetts who wanted to there was a tornado and they had some money and they wanted to open up a new grocery store. And I was like, how can we help with this? And someone was like, go talk to Brian. And I talked to Brian. Brian's like, all right, if you help, if you do some of our cases as well, we'll sort of help oversee that kind of work. That project didn't quite work out. We shifted into some stuff with rap. We came to Brian again and we said, we've been working with this group in the Boys and Girls Club. Can we host a contract negotiation workshop for middle school and high school students who are aspiring music artists? And he said, sure, go for it. And this was all basically in our first semester. And so from that, we had this amazing community energy, and it's been so great to sort of be a part of the rebirth of CEP and, continue to watch the amazing work that the group is doing now. So I don't know. Yeah, is that all right, start?
That's all right.
All right, yeah.
Faith.
Sure. Good afternoon, everyone. And I'd just like to say thank you to Brian and the law school for inviting me to come and share about my experience. I'd just like to say that TLC has been so important for me. It laid the foundation for my career. And I think without it, I wouldn't be where I am today. And I say that because I like to think of lawyers as people who empower, right? We deploy our skills and our knowledge to achieve particular outcomes for our clients. And the outcome that I was interested in was economic justice and financial empowerment and wealth creation, particularly in low-income communities where there's a high minority concentration. And so I had this idea that transactional practice could be a tool of social change. And I wanted the opportunity to sort of play with that idea and see what it looked like in real life. And so I enrolled in TLC. I was a business and nonprofit student advocate, and Joe was my supervisor, actually. And then I did another semester at the Community Enterprise Project. And I got to see how my idea played out in real life. I was working with low-income entrepreneurs who were sort of exercising their personal agency to start businesses and to grow these enterprises that were money-making ventures that they could use not only to empower themselves, but to hire people in their communities. And then I was working with nonprofits who are working with food law issues and workforce development and real estate development, all with the goal of transforming communities. And I was like, this is for me. I love this. And so I took that experience forward. After I left law school, I worked for a nonprofit in New York that did economic development work solely, and I did transactional practice there and moved on to go in-house at a nonprofit where I continued to do economic development work, worked with low-income entrepreneurs, and now I've hung my own shingle to focus on a different perspective of economic development that sort of is an outgrowth of e-commerce and the way that digital technologies are revolutionizing our world and making it so much easier for people to start businesses and making it easier for nonprofits to connect with others to achieve their charitable missions. But all of that started for me in TLC, and being a part of this clinic has really been, like Brett said, a defining experience for my career, and I'm so grateful that I had that opportunity.
Okay, I guess I'm last. I feel like I drew the short straw here. Everyone's already said so much. But as Brian said, I work in Buffalo, basically doing what I did in CEP for 3 semesters. There's not much difference in the work, so there's a pretty direct connection with my current practice and what I was doing with the clinics. One reason that CEP was so important to me is that when I entered law school, I just had this broad idea that I wanted to work in legal services at some nonprofit, hopefully in my hometown of Buffalo. But I didn't know in what way I wanted to do that or I could do that. And at least my perception was that a lot of legal services for low-income people involves litigation. You hear a lot about immigration defense, people being public defenders, foreclosure defense, consumer debt defense, and it's all going to court, civil rights litigation. But for me trying CEP on a whim, I don't think I would have recognized how valuable transactional work can be for people who are trying to lift themselves up, just like Tonya, right? The story you told is perfect, and that's exactly why I think we do the work we do, is to help people like you. So CEP helped open my eyes to transactional work in legal services. And I think the way I'll conclude is Brian said at the beginning of this panel that when CEP got started, the first time it was called CEP in the early 90s, it was maybe the first program of its kind, or one of the first of its kind. And there weren't many programs around the country that were doing transactional legal aid work. And I don't know, 30 years? Almost 30 years later, I'm not trying to make anyone feel old or anything. There are programs like this throughout the United States, not only at law schools. I think historically these programs started to sprout up in law schools around the country, and now nonprofits have full-time staff attorneys that are doing this work. I was able to win a Skadden Fellowship to establish this kind of program in Buffalo. I'll give a shout out to Jared Nicholson, who's here in the audience. He also, with a Skadden Fellowship, started a program like this. He's an HLS grad and worked with CEP during a summer, I think, right? And started a transactional legal aid practice in Lynn and Lawrence. And so the work that's done here at HLS through TLC and CEP helps a lot of people in this region, a lot of clients of the program. But through its influence of students coming through the program, even people hearing about it outside of the HLS community, it has really spawned what I think is a movement that's going to continue to grow and provide access to law for people like Tonya throughout the country.
All right, thank you, Steve. So we have about 15 minutes left, and we've been doing a lot of talking up here, and we want to get you guys involved. And if you have any comments you'd like to make or any questions for anyone, please fire away and let us know. Yeah.
Thank you for this. I'll be working at a law firm here in Boston in the fall. And last summer, a lot of the pro bono stuff they did was litigation focused. I was wondering what's the best way for a law firm to reach out to get corporate transactional pro bono work? Is it through your organization or other ways, or to find that work?
Well, it is good when you can find an organization that you can partner with, whether it be at a law school or whether it be a community organization. So you can go through their vehicles. They've identified needs within the community, identified people who could use the services of a law firm. And that's always a good way to do it. Here in Boston, for instance, there's a project of the Lawyers Committee for Civil Rights called the Economic Justice Project. And they came into being a few years after we started. And what they've been able to do over time is to find interested law firms who use the clients that come through there to provide their services to those clients. So maybe it's an organization of about 10 firms through Economic Justice Project, and they identify, they screen clients, and the firms make themselves available. So that's one method that people have sometimes used. The law firm Goodwin Proctor, for example, they do workshops throughout the community. So that's another way that sometimes firms will get involved, and they've partnered with community organizations. Or, attached to a law school, and that's another way. So we'd love to have the help of alumni. So anyone in the audience who want to connect with us at the Transactional Law Clinics, we'd love to have your involvement.